This movie is about the question of religion, theology, cultism, and belief in general. We're going to get into it.
This film is dark, interesting, and filled with thought-provoking tension. Two ex-polygamists take on the controversial Heretic film.
Hello and welcome to the Brothers Random Show. My name is Travis.
I'm Michael.
And we are two ordinary brothers discussing extraordinary ideas and some random shit. Michael, why are we here?
Today we are discussing Heretic, the 2024 horror film.
Good afternoon. Mr. Reed, are you interested in learning more about the Church of Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
Wow. No, you read more than we do. No, seriously, Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed.
Well, ladies, I think it is time.
Time for what?
Time for enlightenment.
Oh. Mr. Reed?
Welcome.
We need to return to the church.
If you aren't ready to leave, you'll have to exit through the back of my house.
So, which door?
It's a simple choice, but it should not be made simply. Belief or disbelief.
What happens if we choose the wrong door?
And we wanted to discuss it because we both grew up in a polygamist compound cult, I guess you could say. This plays with a lot of religious themes and questions, things like that, and we wanted to discuss it here.
I don't want to be disparaging towards the LDS Church. Michael and I have left the Mormon fundamentalist religion, and we have no intentions of tearing down people's religions. We are going to use this movie as a platform to discuss religion in general and take it in the spirit that it is intended. This is the IMDb summary. Two young religious women are drawn into a game of cat and mouse in a house of a strange man.
Here's Johnny.
It stars Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, and Chloe East. It is directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who were the original screenplay writers for A Quiet Place. Let's do initial thoughts of the movie.
Initial thoughts.
And
Okay, yeah.
then we can get into some spoilers.
So yeah, initial thoughts. One thing out the gate, Hugh Grant was really on point.
He's phenomenal in this
I
film.
really liked his acting in this.
Yes.
He really he did this really neat mixture of being a very pleasant person, but at the same time, that pleasantness came with this creep vibe that you could take it as him just being pleasant or really creepy.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
Yeah, there's like this sinister and pleasant at the same time. So it's like two competing thoughts in your head while you're watching him. And Hugh Grant's really been known for most of his career for being like romantic leads, British romantic leads. And I think he's been trying for a long time to get away from that. And this is phenomenal acting on his part. It's his movie, essentially. So the premise really deals a bunch with Mormonism. And Mormonism recently, in the last, I would have to say 5-10 years, has really come under a lot of scrutiny, a lot of public eyes. They used to kind of run under the radar. Nobody knew much about them, but pop culture has suddenly grasped onto Mormonism and, the LDS. For people who don't know, the history is very complex. It's known as America's religion because it's one of the few religions that has lasted the test of time that was originated in the United States.
So starting out with these LDS sister missionaries are going out and they're trying to preach the gospel as the church does. And people, a lot of times people will see the elders, that's the males, the male versions of these missionaries. And
they're always pleasant. They're always very kind, always willing to help.
Yeah.
When you're a cynical person, a lot of the time that's off-putting. And so society has this very cynical view of the LDS missionaries, as well as like Jehovah's Witnesses do this as well. And I've had a couple run-ins with the Jehovah's Witnesses. When they introduce these two characters, there's a couple conversations that they have that feel very true to the plight that these kind of missionaries go through, and one that probably doesn't feel too close to reality. So when they're introduced, I just want to get into this before we get into spoilers. They're introduced talking about the male anatomy. I don't imagine that many LDS women ever have this conversation.
During a mission, probably.
Especially during a mission.
And
especially between sister missionaries who, for the most part, are virginal, I guess is the best way to put it. I could see it like women who have been married for long periods of time, going to each other and talking about this. But it's introduced where these two characters are introduced where they're talking about the male anatomy.
What is it, son? I don't know, sir. But it looks like a giant dick.
Yeah.
Take a look out of starboard. Oh my God, it looks like a huge...
Pecker!
Oh, where?
Wait, that's not a woodpecker. It looks like someone's...
Privates! We have reports of an unidentified flying object. It is a long, smooth shaft, complete with two balls.
What is that? That looks just like an enormous...
Wang, pay attention.
I was distracted by that enormous flying...
Willie.
Yeah, what's that?
Well, it looks like a giant...
Johnson. Yes, sir.
As an introduction to these Mormon sister missionaries, it kind of was just like, I don't know. Like, that's not probably something that a lot of Mormon sister missionaries are going to have a conversation about. I could be wrong. I mean, we didn't serve missions.
Neither one of us served missions, so we don't know. So
we probably don't know. The girls that I grew up with that were LDS, were definitely the girls that were not having those kind of conversations that I was aware of. It was always the kind of naughty Christian girls that would have these kind of conversations.
Scandalous.
Nothing against Christians, but that's just kind of how it was. Kind of two different worlds, really. Where they were fine with going to R-rated movies and having those kinds of conversations about sex and porn and
if you're unaware, LDS are very strict against going to R-rated movies. They're very strict against caffeinated drinks. They're very strict against alcoholic drinks. Mm-hmm. And most people are kind of aware of this. Like, most people know Mormonism as that. There's a plethora of issues with the LDS church, and they talk about polygamy in this at some point. I guess we should probably get into spoilers. And our initial thoughts are, this is I would say it's a rough movie to watch, and it feels like some of the conversations about theology are conversations that we've heard before. So there's not really anything new that it added to the conversation, but it does kind of raise thoughts about belief.
I think the best part of this film is the fact that this bad character,
Mr. Reed,
throughout the film, he's using things to control people, to control these young women. And it's a good heads up to people to be like, hey, listen, don't allow yourself to be controlled by these things. And for
by
instance,
religion,
by religion, but but it's not just religion. Like he basically tricks, and this, I don't think this is getting into spoilers because it's at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
At the very beginning, he kind of gets these sister missionaries to come into his house at the trick that he tells them his wife is inside.
The missionaries are not supposed to enter a home without both a man and a woman.
I'm not sure how it is for the male
the elders. They're not supposed to be alone with a person of the opposite sex at all.
Yeah.
That's their rules.
Being in cells, I remember being trained in cells that a girl that's going to show somebody the presentation, never go into a man's house unless you see the whites of a woman's eyes.
Yeah.
So
that was like the rule of thumb kind of thing.
That was the rule, was don't go into someone's house until you see the whites of a woman's eyes. That was the saying, right? And I kept kind of thinking that when he's getting them to come into the house.
Yeah.
I kept kind of thinking that because he's like, oh yeah, my wife's inside. Yeah, totally. Yeah, she's in here cooking.
Yeah.
You guys can come inside. And like, as time goes on, you realize, yeah, obviously, and I don't feel like it's spoiling anything because you really quickly you start to pick up. Even the trailer gives that up. Yeah. He's getting them into the house.
That's a very interesting scene because there's a lot of manipulation going on there. First, he's being
manipulation. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Like, the way he manipulates.
Yes, he's very good. Yeah, he's a manipulator. Yep. It's
good to like realize these things because he's using cordiality, he's using pleasantness, he's using a lot of different kind of social norms to manipulate these girls.
Yes.
And not just religiously, but just social norms.
And the age bracket is very interesting too, because the girls are young. They're Mormon missionaries. I think for sister missionaries, they're 19 to 21. I'm surprised that this has not been a horror movie that's been made before, because Mormon missionaries have been around and there's always jokes about them in movies and stuff like that. If you think about it, you're entering another person's house, and that's kind of a scary, like, you don't know these people, they don't know you. It's a very strange thing to do. And it plays on people's social norms of pleasantry. And he uses that to his advantage. He's talking about blueberry pie. It's a very cliche thing to say. It's my wife's baking a pie in the back. He's very personable, very polite. And it's perfect casting because Hugh Grant is kind of known for these characters from the 90s. There's Notting Hill, there's Four Weddings and a Funeral. Like, he's about a boy. He's always playing these charming British schlubs, kind of thing. And that plays into this character, and it's very great performance. So yeah, I guess we should get into spoilers now. Things escalate pretty quickly after they enter the house. He mentions offhandedly that the house has metal walls and a ceiling, and just mentions it, and then continues on in his conversation about religiosity. And it was so quick.
Well, it was right while they were coming in.
Yeah,
I hope you don't mind the metal walls and
in the
ceiling.
Yeah.
And I think it was just in passing, and these young girls I think it just went straight over their head.
It gets very dark very quickly. So he doesn't initially do anything to them. and it's not even until the third act that I think he even touches any of them. But leading up to it, you can tell it gets a little bit more intense and a little bit more intense, and it really takes a left turn when he mentions polygamy in the LDS church. That's when the left turn happens, because at first they're all like, "Oh yeah, we want to talk to you about this book that Joseph Smith found," and so he's like, and all of a sudden he just goes, "And what about polygamy?" And he plays the same thing that most people will argue when arguing against polygamy. And you and I have raised in this, so we kind of have heard this before, but he says, couldn't Joseph Smith have used polygamy to negate guilt over his infidelities from his wife?
Yeah, and this is I think really common. You've got these 18, I mean, because the boys can go out earlier, so anywhere from 18 to 21-year-olds, and you got people asking them these deep questions like, what about polygamy, things like that, and you're just and these are kids. I mean, they're out there,
their frontal lobe isn't fully developed until 25. Like these guys, these people don't know about like deep religious and philosophical discussions.
Yeah, it's really tough to for these kids to quite grasp. Probably somewhere like half of them probably didn't even realize that there was polygamy in their founding.
The church. Yeah,
I mean, I remember talking to a girl in the church about it. And she was like, wait a minute, I thought polygamy was just a Brigham Young thing. I'm like, nope. so like even then, sometimes these kids are growing up in the church and don't even realize.
Do you remember? Okay, so just a little backstory. Like, do you remember the year that they banished polygamy out of the LDS church?
1890. He mentions it in the film.
And yes, and so I don't remember the date because I never got into it, but so polygamy has been a non-part of the church for over 100 years. Just so everybody kind of knows, the Mormons did receive tons of persecution originally, and Mormons of today like to play it off that the reason they received so much persecution was solely based on the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith's claim that he got, like, an angel gave it to him. But I'm more inclined to believe that it was because of polygamy that they were persecuted more. Because most of the country was religious in some denomination, with Lutherans, Catholics, whatever, and this flies in the face of those religions. Polygamy does, at least. It has more to do. It probably has more to do with Islam than it has to do with Catholicism. So anyway, to get back into this movie, things escalate from there. He brings them into another room. This house is a refurbished old church to look like a home, and he takes them into another room where he expresses to them, and he uses the Monopoly game as a way to show them that the origins of their religion aren't original to Joseph Smith. He just kind of took from other religions and kind of planted them anywhere that was convenient. And he uses the Monopoly game. It's quite brilliant scene. And then he talks about Creep from Radiohead. Is an original song because it was kind of taken from this old 70s song, and somebody took from Creep. Creep is the best known one for me. I mean, I didn't know the other two songs.
Sure. Yep, same.
And what's so great about that scene is he actually starts singing it, and he's like, "I'm a weirdo," and he says that like he does it as a
really weirdo. You're like, oh gosh, yeah, you are. So good.
So yeah, it is good. Yeah. And then he expresses to them, he kind of explains to them that everything is a derivative of something else, even Judaism. And this kind of calls into question belief in general. And he puts on two doors, he puts disbelief and belief. He writes on the doors and he tells, choose which door. One gets you out.
Belief or disbelief.
He basically implies that one will get him out and one won't.
Yeah.
And you find out that they both go to the same place.
They both go to the same place, which is an interesting
matter.
metaphor, because if you believe or you don't believe, you both go to the same place.
I mean, sure, maybe it's a thought process that maybe it doesn't matter what, like, if you believe or if you don't believe, we both end up in the dirt anyways.
Yeah.
Honestly, the first half of this film I liked better.
When it gets
the second half of the film, as it gets into
more body horror kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess you could say he brings out a prophet, and it's
okay.
Kinda,
so I think the point to that, so he brings out a woman that he's been holding captive, but you don't know that he's been holding her captive, and he tells them that she's going to eat a pie that's poisoned.
Yep.
And then she's going to raise from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
And they watch her as she eats the pie and dies. And then they go check her pulse and she's dead. And then they go back upstairs for a short period of time and they come back and she comes back to life. Now, he's doing this to mess with them and to make them think. But the truth is they figure out that he has other people in the house that he's keeping captive, and he just replaced one with a different one woman with a different woman. But his point is that it's not, to somebody to come back to life like Jesus. His point is somebody's manipulating you in some way, and while manipulating them, right? So he's trying to, and what was his claim is the only true religion is, what was it? Power? Control.
I think that's kind of what
it implies, that
implied towards the end is that's the true religion is control.
Well, and I'm not saying that's the true religion, but his point of view is extremely on point, because the control is what cults use to, and you and I have talked about this a lot. The BITE model is a very famous acronym for how to tell if you're in a cult, or how to tell if there is a cult. And the thing is that he's using some of these claims from the BITE model. You can look it up. It's very easy to look up, about controlling other people. And a lot of cults and religions control people to the point. And what's great about this is they talk about the sacred underwear. Mormons are very well known for having this sacred underwear, and everybody has like pejoratives for them, like Jesus jammies, and
the moment of persecution that they show in this film, where these kids come
at
up
the very beginning, yes,
at the very beginning, and pull down her skirt. They say something about magic underwear, and then pull down her skirt, and
it's like a TikTok video.
Who is he? He's an asshole, sir.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, it shows her later. She's kind of crying from it.
Yeah, that would be a humiliating moment for a very religious girl.
I mean, things like that, it's not like common, but I have heard
of that happening,
of things similar to that happening.
Oh, no kidding. Ooh.
And you talk to some people who are returned missionaries, and you ask them, things, and sometimes they'll have little stories like that. Like, one returned missionary was telling me that they were riding their bikes along the road, and somebody threw like a slushie at them, and like it hit them, and
Well, I guess we could kind of get into that. So I know a bunch of returned missionaries, one of which his companion was mugged and shot, and yeah, and he was in a foreign country, of course, and I mean he lived, the companion lived, but I mean talk about a crazy incident. I know of somebody who was in an earthquake or was in the country that had an earthquake, and so they were helping out with earthquake stuff. I know somebody who got shot at on his mission. He didn't get. I used to work with a guy who got shot at, and him and his companion had like just ran. He said, "We just ran away."
Yeah,
and so I mean, they're not without a danger on these things, and you would think that I think the church does everything that they can to mitigate any kind of disaster that's gonna come their way, but sometimes there's unforeseen things. I mean, I'm sure there's been missionaries killed on their mission. I can't think of any specific stories, but it is interesting that it's a religion that is kind of putting people in harm's way to further.
They're putting people out there in the world, and out there in the world, there's things that will happen. It does happen, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, you could be you could not be on your mission. You can be a college kid and have the same kind of thing happen. I mean,
exactly.
when I went to college, one of the guys I used to hang out with, he's like, yeah, the first couple of weeks here, I saw body bags out in my apartment complex yard.
Jeez. Yeah.
And he was like, what am I doing here? Kind of thing. Like that's when so I mean, there's always going to be those things, I guess. So I
was just bringing up the persecution part because
that does happen.
It didn't seem out of place that something like that could happen. Yeah.
This might require like a longer conversation, but I am interested to see what your thoughts are. What do you think? We're not trying to disparage the LDS Church in any way in all this, but we will be talking about all this stuff. But what what do you think was Joseph's point to having religious underwear? Do you think it was mostly about control? I mean, if we were to take away the idea that he actually was told by God to do it, what would be the motivation?
The religious religious underwear.
Non-religious motivation of the religious underwear. Like, what would be his motivation to present this into his religion?
Okay. Well, this goes back into a lot of like old history for the fact that a lot of the endowment, which is the sacred rites and rituals that
they perform
Mormons do in the temples, a lot of that it seems stems from the Masons endowment.
And do Masons wear religious underwear?
No, not that I know of, but my understanding is that some of the symbols that are on the religious underwear are Masonic symbols.
Masonic symbols. Okay.
So,
and he borrowed heavily from Masonic rituals and stuff like that.
There's some
debate.
There's debate. Yes, because my understanding was that his name is on the Masonic records, that he was a Mason.
That he was a Mason.
But I have also heard from people that he was not, but that they do have records of his father and his brother being Masonic.
So they would have probably told him.
It's possible that they could have told him, or he himself was. And I haven't done the research to know for certain whether he was or what wasn't. You're trying to think of like what's the what's the purpose? So if you logically try to figure out, okay, what's his purpose of introducing polygamy? And in this film, he kind of says, oh, it was to hide his infidelity or make his infidelity acceptable. Sure. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's a possibility. I'm just
always curious as to like because if you follow the bite model, it's about controlling every aspect of your life to the point where they dictate what you wear. Like to even that point.
Sure. Yep. So that.
Yeah, that's
would fall kind of under that, I guess you could say.
And this, according to this, like with Mr. Reed, the Hugh Grant character, he actually says, it's about control. This isn't the religion is about controlling people. And you could argue politics.
He's saying that for all religions. He's putting all religions in
that category.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the end of the movie, the very end of the movie. So one of the girls is killed by him, but not before she kills him. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on. They find many people that he's been keeping in cages, like 6 or 7 people, it looks like, and it just kind of goes off the rails in the third act. And one of the sisters, the sister who was embarrassed, who was deep-pantsed earlier in the movie by TikTokers, she gets out. She's bleeding out. She's dying. And she sees a butterfly touch her hand. And earlier in the film, she mentions, like, if I died, I would want to come back as a butterfly, like as just like theorizing, just offhanded comment. And then you see the butterfly is not there. Now, the whole movie is it feels like the movie takes a stand at that point, saying she's just going to die and go off into darkness. Her brain's hallucinating. And they talk about this earlier in the about this near-death experiences, and the claim is that in a near-death experience, your brain is hallucinating because of lack of either oxygen or blood or whatever it's lacking. Mm-hmm. You're hallucinating stuff. So is the movie taking a stance at that point? Like right before it fades to black, she looks at a butterfly and then it's gone all of a sudden. And it didn't fly away. It's just gone. And she's still looking at her hand.
Is the movie taking a stance? Possibly. It kind of seems like throughout the film that
it's taking a stance that there's nothing at the end of life. Like that it's an atheistic view is essentially.
Yeah, probably.
Because the villain is the one that's telling, the man who's killing people is the one that's telling them that religions don't matter, or all religions are derivative of other
are about
religions.
Control more than they are anything else. Sure. And he's also the one that's got all these other women in cages.
Yes. So he's actually controlling them, right? He's controlling other people. Yeah. So it's like he's a constant contradiction.
You want to be careful, like allowing him to be representative of atheists, I guess you could say, or of people who use religion to cage people.
Yeah.
This is a horror film.
This is a horror film, but it's also got a plethora of metaphor all throughout. Like you just said, cage people. Religions sometimes cage people, and people don't like to be caged. But also religions help people in times of need. And so there's
there's that at the end. They're both dying. And he's like, pray for me or us. I think he says.
Pray for us. Yeah.
Pray for us. And she's like, praying does nothing. And then she prays.
For all your power and your grace, dear baby God.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Let's dig in. That was a hell of a grace, man. You nailed that like a split hole.
Appreciate that. I'm not gonna lie to you. It felt good.
So it there's a little bit of, does it do nothing or does it help? Like, not sure.
Well, but then you could also argue that her answer to her prayer, because he's coming to kill her. He's slowly coming to kill her because he's been gutted and she's been gutted.
She got him in the throat.
She got him in the throat. And then she starts praying as he's slowly crawling towards her. And then the girl that you think has already been dispatched wakes up or whatever and knocks him with the board.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that.
Yeah.
So was that an answer? Was that an answer to her prayer while the girl's sitting there praying?
Yeah. Is it a miracle?
Is it a miracle?
Because it kind of does. It's like, oh, was that a miracle?
But
but did it also really happen? Like,
well, sign of a good movie is it sparks debate. And I think that's what they're trying to do, because they're like weaving this fine line about whether there are miracles or whether there aren't miracles, whether religion is a whole good or a whole bad. Like there's all these, but I think the clincher with the butterfly is the movie's stance on everything else.
Yeah, because it did seem like she's
just hallucinating
the butterfly. Yeah. I don't know I guess it's open enough so that you could kind of interpret it the way you wanted to. Kind of like religion, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah. In a sense.
You can kind of interpret it the way it speaks to you. And he mentions that towards the beginning of the film. He says something about, he's like, how do you know it's true? And they're like, well, it's how you feel about it. And he's like, yes, how you interpreted it.
Yeah.
How you interpret your own relationship with God, kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to get into some critiques of the film itself, not the messages behind the film.
Sure.
So I kind of wish that it kind of stayed, more thriller than body horror. Like if they had just kind of kept away from I think their horror,
when they brought in this creepy lady and
like it goes
everywhere and she dies and comes back. That I kind of like, you lost me. It's like, oh gosh, really? Like, but I think it could have kept just a slight creep rather than going full on horror.
Full on horror. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the where this film was really entertaining was when he's talking to them.
Yes.
About philosophy and religion and theology, but there's this undertone of, is this guy going to kill me?
Yes. And that's where there's a ton of tension in those scenes.
Yeah.
And those scenes are,
that's
those
where
scenes
this film was good.
Yeah. Was in the tension.
It thrived.
Yeah. And I wish they had just kind of stayed in that. You know what would have been really fascinating if they had stayed in that and the girls like escape, but he never touches them and he lives.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that have been more fascinating?
I think it would have been more. Yeah.
Like it would have been kind of a cat and mouse thing, but it would have been underlining, like, is he just having a discussion with them or is he being completely off the rails? And then all of a sudden they do something and they get out and they haven't been harmed and he hasn't been harmed.
And he has, and
wouldn't that have been way more interesting?
I think it may have. And how do you do it nowadays? Like the stakes have to be,
dire.
Have to become dire. Yeah. They have to be like top, but it would have been interesting to kind of play with this notion of, maybe he was planning on letting them out all along. Like was he really that bad?
Yeah.
Or was he kind of really just walking them through a series of thought processes and then he really was going to just let him out at the end? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I think that would have been
way better movie.
Better than,
because then they would have gotten out and then they would have been questioning their religion the whole way through, or that
and questioning, like, his motivations from the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could have played with something like that. I think it could have been.
But you're right.
Better that way.
The tension at the beginning of this movie is the highlight of this movie. Like the tension is what's great. Once it goes off the rails, it's no longer a great movie. It's a 2-bit horror movie, and that's disappointing. If they had just stayed with the tension and had that tension kind of all the way through the movie, and then ended on them getting away, that would have been, I think, a superior film.
Well, I think this is part and parcel of how movies are nowadays. We used to have films that had no stakes other than very high pressure, intense dialogue.
Yes.
Right? When you watch 12 Angry Men, except for this kid's life that is on the line with the trial, like that, those are all the stakes, but it's all interesting and edge of seat dialogue. And they could have done that with this film. It could have just been edge of seat, interesting dialogue the whole way, playing on the fact that possibly this guy might try to kill him, but then kind of playing with this thing of whether or not he really was all along going to try to kill him or not.
Or if he just wanted to prove a point.
Yeah. If he really was just trying to creepily and scarily prove this point. Yeah. But it would have been one of those things throughout the film where he grabs a knife and they think that he's going to kill him, but then he like goes over to the kitchen and cuts something up.
Yeah.
And never uses the knife on them kind of thing. But that's not how this film played out. It after the first into the first half of the film,
the third act
into the third act, it's all out. He is trying to kill him. They are all these people are in cages and they're all being,
it's like the filmmakers didn't trust the initial idea to ratchet up the tension. They needed to add all these other horror elements to get it to, and they're horror writers. I mean, they wrote The Quiet Place. The Quiet Place is a phenomenal film, and I quite love the sequel as well. But, I mean, this I would say as far as a film goes, I mean, the first half of this movie is by and far the best half because of the tension and the religious discussion that it's kind of playing in that tension. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I don't think it's really saying much other than just asking questions. I think that's kind of what it's doing. It feel like it takes a stance towards the end, though. Like that's they're going, no, there's nothing at the end. Your brain is hallucinating this stuff. Check us out on social media, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just look for The Sword in the Skull.
If you liked this video, you are the subscriber we're looking for.
In the meantime, keep reading, keep listening, keep watching, learn more. We'll see you, brother.
See ya.
There you go, son. Now get out of here. You're bothering me.